Okay, getting the thread started here through the eyelets of the CRB wrapping tool, and starting the thread for the wraps. Just going over top, one turn, and then pushing with my thumb the working end of the line over the tag end. The thread tension will start to lock that thread in place and start your wrap. The fiberglass blank is pretty slippery, so I had to do 3 of these in order to get it to stay. You could do as many as you like, as many as you need to. Um, Once your thread is locked in and the thread tension is holding everything in place, you can clean things up. Going in here, working with the tool to just make sure everything is tidy to start the wrap, nice and tight and aligned to the blank and in the position that I want for the start of the wrap. Once you're happy with that, just going in with a sharp, clean razor blade and trimming off that tag. Do yourself a favor and get new razor blades when you're working on this. It really makes a difference to be able to just reach in and trim that thread pretty quickly. The CRB tool is great. You can see I just adjusted the thread attitude there to allow me to create these open wraps over the guide foot. And this is a handy little tip that I picked up from some videos online, making those spiral wraps over the guide foot up onto the foot and then pushing them back, packing them back to the start of the wrap, allows you to make that transition from the rod blank to the start of the guide foot without having a bunch of thread there. I did take the time when I built this rod to file down the guide feet, and that makes a significant difference, especially on the larger stripping guides. But using that spiral technique, I found to be really helpful in getting a smooth transition from the rod blank right up onto the guide foot. Just a few more turns here, keeping everything neat and tidy and packing as I go. Taking my time here. I want to make sure that, especially on these smaller sections of the rod, that I'm getting as many turns of thread as possible to lock in the guide foot. The strength of a guide wrap comes from the amount of turns you can get into an area. It's not in your varnish or your epoxy. It's the density of thread wraps. So packing as you go is important. We're going to start the first inlay wrap. I'm going to just lay in a inlay wrap thread here. It's about a foot long. Just lay it underneath your working thread. It'll hold it in place. Give yourself 3-4 turns, something like that, just to anchor that thread in place so it's not sliding around on you. And as you go, just keep things clean and tidy. This will go a long way to make sure that your inlay wraps are perpendicular to the rod and not at an angle and not sort of wavering as you spin the rod around. So making sure that end is nice and clean. So what I'm going to do here is just place another wrap that I did and just get an eyeball for the spacing, and that looks to be about right. So I'm going to take the working end of the inlay wrap and slide it back underneath the brown thread. And now you can see I've opened up a space, and I'm just going to make 2 full turns manually without spinning the rod, and then lock the tag end of that inlay wrap back underneath the working thread. And again, adjusting the attitude of your working thread is really helpful on this CRB system. It enables you to manipulate how much tension, the angle, and make sure you're not overlapping your turns as you go through. So these additional turns of the working thread here are locking the end of that inlay down. And as I rotate this, you'll see that there's a spot where there's actually 3 turns. Right there, you can see. And what I need to do is manipulate the end of this inlay thread so that the start and finish of the inlay are completely aligned. And this will give the this will give the look that you get 2 passes of thread, 2 turns of thread with no visible start or stop. The thread just sort of disappearing underneath the brown working thread. I really like this look. I picked this up from a maker on YouTube, and it's a really helpful method for doing these inlay wraps. Once you get your wraps in and you're happy with the alignment of the ends, just take some time to clean them up and keep them aligned to your wrap and to your blank. And when you're ready, just snip off the end of it with your razor blade, and try to keep that as close as possible to the blank. You can see a tiny little tag end there, and in order to hide that, what I'll do is wrap the brown thread right over top of that, just making sure I'm laying it on and not pushing against it, just laying it right over top of that tag. Now I can introduce the second inlay wrap after I clean this end up just a little bit. Again, this sort of taking your time, being precise goes a long way. There's no rush here. Just lay that second inlay thread right underneath your working thread. I try to keep these in the same spot in the blank so that they're sort of aligned, and I don't have you will see the start of the thread, or you'll see the thread laying underneath the brown working thread a little bit. So I'm just trying to keep all those in the same spot using the blank that I previously wrapped for reference. Spacing looks good, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move my carriage over to the right, pass my thread underneath, and then do one full turn up and over the blank and back underneath the working thread to lock it in place. Again, you can see that section is a couple millimeters that's doubled up, but we'll go back and fix that once we lock in the end of that inlay turn with the working thread. Here, just tightening it a little bit, pulling against itself so that those wraps stay nice and tight and consistent, and using the thread packing tool to keep everything tidy and aligned as I go. If you have a little bit of a waver in your wraps, you can fix that at the end with a little bit of manipulation with a tool or some burnishing. But again, I just found taking my time and making sure these were as straight as possible went a long way. Align those ends, and then give it a pack, and you can see that the start and stop of that thread just starts to disappear underneath the working thread. You can lock that tag end of that single inlay wrap down with a few more turns of the working thread, and then reach in with your razor blade and cut that off as close as possible to your wraps without cutting your working thread or damaging your wraps. And once again, just being careful here on the next turn to capture that tag underneath the working thread, so that it completely disappears. Once you're happy with that, you can insert a pull loop. I'm using Maxima Chameleon, just nylon here, monofilament Maxima. I think it's like a 4-pound, but I found that the slippery mono slid underneath the wraps a little bit easier, and it was reusable, and it made a difference on the long build here. So just finishing off, double checking my work, making sure that things are consistent as I go up the blank. That looks pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna pinch the thread here with my forefinger and loosen the tension, and this will just make it easier when I snip this thread that it won't go flying away from me. And take that end, slip it through the pull loop, hold it tight, and then pull that pull loop right through the wraps you just made. And a little bit of force. I tied some loops into these to help me just get good purchase on that, and then finish that wrap. When I go to trim these tags off, if I pull my thread to the right, I can open up a little space in the wraps. And that space will give me a little bit of room. You can see it right there. A little bit of room to be able to pack back over the tag and help it disappear. It's not as much of an issue with the brown working thread, but it is more of an issue with the contrasting inlay wraps. So you'll see here in a second, I go back in, I'll grab this tag end of the cream single turn inlay, and I'm going to pull it to the right, and that will open up a little space in the thread wraps. There it is. And when I come in really close with the razor blade and cut that off, that little space will accommodate the tag. And when I use the burnishing tool, I can push the thread wraps just ever so slightly back over the tag, and it'll disappear completely. Once again, pulling to the right, opening up the wraps, snipping it off as close as possible, being careful not to damage your existing threads, and then using your tool to just manipulate those threads back over the tag and helping it disappear underneath your working thread completely. This tool really shines when it comes to this kind of work, and I'm really happy that this. I'm really happy with it. It's been a great tool that's helped this process throughout. Once you've got everything tied off, you can go back through and just use your tool to kind of push the wraps into place and make sure everything is concentric and perpendicular to the rod, double checking my spacing to make sure that I'm consistent, and pretty happy with that. It looks good. So the next thing I'll do, and I don't know if this is, I don't know if this is the right way to do things or what, but I found that just applying a liberal coat of color preserver at this phase helped keep the thread wraps in place. This was important to me as I was picking the project up and putting it back down, storing the rod, moving the rod around in the middle of the project. Having those thread wraps secured with just a layer of color preserver made it so I wasn't worried about thread wraps coming off as I was, in the midst of the project. So I'm being pretty liberal here with a coat of color preserver. I also, I'm applying this before the rod varnish because I want the colors to remain. Some threads, if you do not use color preserver, the thread will go clear on you. So you have to be mindful of that. The color preserver will dry clear, so even though it looks pretty thick here, once it dries, it'll dry clear. You might see a light, sort of a haze from the dried color preserver. It looks just a little bit whitish on your wraps, but the first coat of varnish will make that disappear completely. Just finishing touches, going back in and using the burnishing tool to make sure the ends of the wraps are nice and clean, as straight as possible, especially where you started your wrap. Sometimes that can look a little loose, so I just go back in and give that a nice little pack and keep it all straight and tidy. Notice a couple spots here that could use a little bit more color preserver just to make sure everything is nice and saturated, and spreading out any excess across the wraps. And there you have it, 2 inlay wraps for the snake guides of the Bronco build. Pretty happy with the process, tools, and yeah, looking pretty good.